Jan is a chairman of Microsoft Europe, and in that capacity, he engages with European governments and policymakers and other societal stakeholders to ensure that Microsoft acts as an open and trusted partner and contributes and listens to Europe's agenda. Let me also ask you this. So in terms of getting out of this economic downturn that we're currently in, what will be the role of technology to help companies and individuals as well to get out of this economic slump?
I think we need to do 3 points which we need to do. We need obviously to deleverage economy, right? That's the point number one. While you still need to look at the big societal issues. I mentioned demography, I mentioned energy and environment. The third I would mention is inclusive globalization. Globalization is a good thing, but we need to look also in places like Africa. Today, Asia is a successful case. What is it, Africa's successful case? Not sure. That's point number one. Point number two is really, what is the new baseline for the economy, but also for the individuals and for the global society, right? And it takes probably the different approach, because we were really everybody was growing by leverage. And if you go back to 230 years ago when Adam Smith wrote a book, Wealth of the Nations, he basically said that profit on one side and care on the other side, care about the others or about the society, can work together. And I think we were too much as a society probably in the profit mode, and we need to shift more in the care mode. And the third one is to really renew the trust in capitalism, right? And that will take a very different, approach. So technology-wise, I think the tendency will be, because those are all big issues, governments throw the money on it, very efficient and effective way. Now, somebody would need to pay it. You have heard at a conference on intergenerational contract we need to do, right? And I think technology can save a lot of money, because the tendency, whether you are public sector or the private sector, tendency will be, give me more for the less. I want to do more with the less. And I think that's where the technology fits very well, addressing the big challenges and addressing those issues like I mentioned the healthcare, right? Healthcare today in Europe, it's 6.8% of the European GDP. If you take just the chronic diseases, it's a little bit higher as a total, right? But if you connect your, lifestyle with the healthcare, you do a lot of things in prevention on those chronic diseases, you can save a lot of money, and you can make the lives of the people much, much better. The same thing with the energy. Today, 40% of energy consumption are the houses, so it takes smart houses management through the software. I'm co-chairing initiative on e-skills across the whole Europe with my friend Michael. He is a CIO of Daimler. And what Michael told me, today in new Mercedes, there's a higher budget for software as opposed for the hardware. That's where the technology is going.
That's very interesting. So let's maybe move a bit away from their sort of high-level implications and talk about the core business of Microsoft, and something that I started the intro with, which is the trend towards cloud computing and all that. How do you view this trend in terms of its implications for the overall strategy of Microsoft? We all know that there are several initiatives, ongoing initiatives, and you guys are going to be releasing their Microsoft web apps soon, and you're working on Windows 7 and all that. So where does it fit within the overall Microsoft strategy, and perhaps what are the implications for the traditional core business of Microsoft, which is selling licensed software?
Right. And I think you mentioned it. We believe that the future is about the 3 screens. You will have some screen which you will always carry, whether it's your mobile phone, PDA, just name it. The second screen you will have at home, that will be your PC or the notebook, whatever. And the third screen is something what I would call entertainment screen, the big screen. And information will be seamlessly synchronized, number one. Number two, software will have a capability and ability to learn your habits, and it's starting already today. And number three, software will really, if you think about what we do, for example, in Cambridge here in Europe, we have 120 scientists working on some big issues like Alzheimer's disease, deforesting in terms of the environment. So computing and the supercomputers today, through the very sophisticated mathematical models, are able to address the big challenges, right? That's in terms of how I am, very optimistic about the technology. I was born, by the way, in '62, and at that time, whole computing power of NASA was less than computing power of my mobile phone today, right? That's the power of the technology. Now, you mentioned rightly the move to the internet, to move to the services. And our strategy is really software plus services. We do believe that you would still need, for some scenarios, like if you wanted to edit your movie, right? You need to have very strong software on your client. But a lot of things will move absolutely to the cloud. Now, talking about our traditional businesses, if you take Windows, whether it's on desktop or server, if you take our desktop products like Office, now SharePoint, a lot of servers, I think you have a traditional businesses, which are the cornerstone of our business. You have server businesses, which are growing a lot. Then we have, I would put it on one bucket, the Xbox and a lot of things what we do in the mobile technology, and that's growing significantly. While in search, and let's be honest, there's a way to go for us. But as you know, with the Bing, I'm very optimistic about what we brought to the market with the Bing search. Plus, the approach with Yahoo, the partnership with Yahoo, we have. It will be a long run for sure. But there, I'm also very in the new area of search. I'm very optimistic because search last 6 years didn't improve that much. You are pretty much still getting the blue links. And what I expect as executive from the search, 3 years from now, if I go to Spain and I will have a list of the meetings, I will have my agenda. I will just say, hey, I would like to be prepared for my meetings and my agenda in Spain, in Barcelona. And I hope that the search will be able to provide me that kind of the service.
What I wanted to ask you, how do you think this will, the move towards cloud computing will affect Microsoft's relationship with clients? Because it's one thing when you license software, and it's a different thing when you offer software as a service, essentially.
Right. And today, we have pretty much all, as you probably know, we introduced last year so-called Azure platform, and we have pretty much options. You can have, on-premise your software in the traditional model. It can be hosted, on us or by some partners. So there are options. Where I'm, very optimistic, and we talk at the conference about that, where the market will grow a lot in emerging markets. If you take Brazil, Russia, India, China, ASEAN countries, Latin America, Central and Eastern Europe. So you will have much more enterprises and much more end users using technology in the future. So you maybe get, let's say less revenue per one user, but it will be much more users. Okay. Do you think this will have an effect, sort of this overall change will have an effect on the internal structure of Microsoft, or how the decision-making takes place, things like that? Well, what is like in the DNA of the company, since the beginning, since we were established in 1975, we really tried hard to work in the very small teams that all individuals can see immediately the impact of the work, right? That's number one. Number two, in the company, it's a very self-critical culture driven by the argument, hey, can we do it better? That kind of we can do it better approach. It's still, there obviously it was different. There was a couple of thousand people when I joined the company. Now it's almost 100,000. You run it differently, and you need to make, what we call rhythm of the business. But I'm quite optimistic that, Microsoft, especially like bringing some new top young generation on the search and new software development will be successful. Obviously, it will take some time. I'm, for example, working in the organization called ISEC, which is the biggest student organization, to really get a mindset of those young people, how they use technology and what they are doing with the technology. Because one element, and you will see not only in Microsoft, but in general in an enterprise space, what I call consumerization of enterprise space. Because those young talents, they would like to use the same tools, whether it's Facebook, Twitter, just name it, in your enterprise space as they use at home.
Okay, so let me just follow up on this a bit. And this question is a bit tricky, perhaps. So what I would like to do, I would like to relate what you were just talking about to the concept of open source movement and open source software. And Microsoft has traditionally been sort of not very favorable towards this whole idea. However, with these changes that you described, with the younger people, and just with the fact that internet is making the work environment more open, and today we perhaps have gone beyond just open source software, but into the things like incentive, when scientists join an open community to contribute to companies' research and development and stuff like that. So what is Microsoft's stance on this changing somewhat? And in general, what is your take on sort of the open source and open innovation movement?
As always, there is a learning process, and I'm former professional tennis player, right? And with conjunction to the competition, I'm always saying to play tennis against the wall, it's pretty boring, and the wall is, winning. It's a very good to have competitors, right? And so I think it's great to have competitors. What Microsoft was opposing in conjunction with the open source, because in some part of that open source movement, they try to push government to prefer just, development through the open source, right? And today we have pretty much 3 different models. It's commercial software, which is like IESE, Oracle, partially Sun, and etc. You have open source, which is driving a lot of services of the IBM, and you have advertising model from Google, right? So, and I think all of those 3 models will live together. What is important if you are a customer and user? What is important? This needs to work very well together, what we call interoperability, that those systems are talking to each other. And, now I think it will really, it doesn't matter how you develop, whether you develop it as open source or commercial. It just needs to work together, right? And that's, I think, how it's evolving. I think we as a company, we just published last year, it's called Interoperability Principles. Nobody else yet did so much, to make sure that all, software is working together. So obviously it is, as you said, it's a, learning process. But as to me, I'm in the industry now almost for 25 years. There will be no one company which will rule the whole world. I think the all, systems will work together.
Another interesting issue that you just brought up has to do with sort of generating revenues for all these exciting and new models, right? So we talk about cloud computing, we talk about open source, but the big issue always is how do you generate revenue off of these models? Can you offer some insight on how you view this issue?
And you're absolutely right, because if you go back to year 2000, the dot-coms bubble, that was the time where people basically mix profit and the market share. Don't take me wrong, market share is a great thing. No. But in the short run, you can invest a lot. But long run, it needs to be profitable market share, right? So we need to look for the profitable models. And it was like, well, hey, there's a lot of eyeballs at that time. Absolutely, right? And a lot of companies collapsed. I think, as you said, it's necessary to generate, profit. And I think, indeed, there will be a combination of those 3 models. I mean, the traditional commercial model, which will be probably, there is a licensing model, that's on the software, and on the services side, you will pay as you go for the usage. There is a model where, the services companies like IBM will profit a lot. And there is a model on advertising, what Google is doing, which is a very powerful model. I see today a little bit tension between the content owners and the distribution owners. If you take the YouTube, quite a bit, absolutely. So we need to solve a lot of questions around the governance. But those 3 models will live together.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, there are lots of discussion around the advertising model and the so-called freemium model, and whether they're viable or not in the long run. Okay, so let me go back to the Bing search engine and some other initiatives that you mentioned, the partnership with Yahoo, and also you have an alliance with Facebook. So all these things appear to be a little bit outside of the immediate core business of Microsoft, or used to be in the past at least. So could you comment maybe on how these initiatives will be developing in the future, where you put in more weight at this point in time, and where you will be putting weight in the longer term?
Right. We became very big, company, right? We are generating over 60 billion revenue, huge profit. So in a sense, you need to have a big businesses, and if we go to some business, we better have that business in 3 to 5 years, 1 billion business, right? That's kind of how you need to, it's mathematics of the big numbers. So you need to have, and that's kind of the first S-curve, you need to have your traditional businesses up and running and going very well. But you need to start also the second S-curve, which is probably maybe not necessarily, it's a very profitable, but on the size of that business, it's just, you know, catching up the first S-curve, if you will. And to me, that kind of the balance will decide about the future. What is very strong, it's not only the Microsoft cash position or, you know, our financial ability, but our ecosystem, in fact, you know, the partners we have, because the great thing with us is that we are a platform company, and other people, other developers are developing their own applications. And in fact, in Europe, and that's the IDC number, which is the independent organization, if we will make €1 from the European market, our partners, whether they do service, applications, trainings, and etc., they generate €8. So it's a great ecosystem around which we are able to generate around 50% of employment in ICT industry in Europe. So there's a lot of good things about that model, and I think it's a strength. Obviously, you may ask how you will apply it from your traditional model to the online model, right? And that's where we need to be very smart and very open with the partners, how we will have a partnership in the future.
Okay. Let me just zoom in on Facebook in particular. Some people recently have been saying the following thing. They would say that Facebook perhaps is becoming a new operating system of the internet. Could you comment on that statement?
Well, I think it's a phenomenal media. I don't know whether it's operating system in a traditional sense, because you see, I'm the software engineer by profession. By definition, it's not operating system. On the other hand, if you think about, I would rather do it in a bigger sense. If you think about the platform, it's a new platform. It's a new platform because and Facebook's got a huge, huge advantage. You can mobilize people from the bottom up in a very, very fast way. The second one I mentioned is Twitter, right? Great Twitter advantage is you don't need, in fact, to have an internet connection. You can do it even in Africa if you have your mobile phone. And if you think what Twitter is doing for democracy, how to bring, you know, clarity to some big issues, it's fantastic.
No, I agree. In fact, you know, we've been running this study on how companies use social media, and when we talk to companies or individuals from some of the emerging countries, in Africa in particular, it seems that they're actually leapfrogging the internet connection and going straight to mobile devices. And that's perhaps another trend that will be affecting the IT industry in the future. All right. Let me ask you the last question, actually. And it would be more of a personal question. And I also would like to go back to what we mentioned in the beginning, which is, you know, the current economic downturn and things like that. So, to you, as a business leader and as a business executive, what kind of lessons this latest economic crisis have you learned from it? And maybe what are some of the things that you can share with, you know, our readers and viewers of this podcast?
Yeah, I touched it in my brief speech in the morning. I think really that, and I mentioned it already, profit and care balance, right? And it's, for me, this is essential. Even, you know, at the stock exchange or in the finance, we have sophisticated mathematical models, but we are very rarely studying the psychology and, for example, the role of the media in the whole crisis, because of the internet and the things like Facebook, Twitter, right? You know, media changed. 10 years ago, it was still business with the facts. Today, it's a much more business with emotions. They are selling narratives, the stories, right? So, and I think we need to do much more, you know, research on behavioral economy, if you will. That's on the economical discipline. If I would say what companies need to do in the future, and obviously it takes a lot of, you know, thinking and a lot of working, I think we need to have a much bigger balance between traditional intelligence, the IQ, and the EQ, right? And for example, reflect into our industry, including me, I'm a technologist by profession. We tend to have in industry very high IQ, while the EQ, the way how we connect, in organization and out of the organization, it's relatively average. And that's where the work needs to be done, to really understand big societal issues, to understand the balance, right? What do you need to do? That's kind of the lesson. I mean, I draw personally this lesson, and I think it's also the lesson for the society and what kind of the new managers or the new leaders we should have. Saying that, because I'm working in some youth organizations, I'm quite optimistic because I'm more and more getting the question like, Jan, if we join Microsoft, are we going to change the world for better? So they are really looking not only in remuneration, compensation, but much more what I would call bigger purpose. That's the lesson I've got.